So a few days ago I did the tabletop analysis of the Piscifun Phantom, an ultra lightweight reel that also was pretty affordable at $70. Now the specs on this reel are pretty amazing. It's got a super lightweight ported spool, as you can see. That's also pretty tall at 36 millimeters, and it's got very adjustable dual brakes, centrifugal and magnetic. So on paper, this reel has all the characteristics to be a really good caster. Now of course, on paper versus out in the real world can be two different things. So to put this reel to the test, I'm going to see how far I can cast a 1/4 ounce casting plug, and I'm going to be putting it up against the current 1/4 ounce casting plug king, the SHIMANO METANIUM MGL. Now it does weigh a little bit more, but they're roughly in the same weight range. Now while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and throw in a subscriber reel, the ultralight Daiwa SS Air. See how this fares against its ultralight rivals. So let's get out on the field and see what's what. Okay, first up we have the Piscifun Phantom, and it actually looks pretty good on this MEGABASS RYOGA rod with the green accents. Now I set the spool tension to just minimize the side-to-side play, and internally I have the brakes set to, I believe, 2. Yep, 2 on the dial and 7 on the external magnetic dial. So let's go. (152 feet 3 inches). (143 feet 5 inches). (142 feet 5 inches). Uh, 145 feet 8 inches. (146 feet even). Okay, so up next we have the Daiwa SS Air. Now I'm doing something a little bit different with the spool tension. I am leaving a slight bit of slop, so there's a little bit of wiggle there, and the external dial is set to, looks like, between 2 and 3, and of course we have the 1/4 ounce casting plug. So let's go. (124 feet 11 inches). (136 feet even). (132 feet 10 inches). (131 feet 7 inches). (126 feet 1 inch). Okay, so we are back out at this marina, and I bought two combos with me, the Piscifun Phantom and the MEGABASS RYOGA. I'm going to be using this for my moving baits, like small flat side cranks and jerk baits and whatnot. And I brought the Bass Rise, and I'm going to use this for one specific lure. I got 15-pound fluoro on here, 12-pound here. And the Bass Rise, I'm going to be seeing if this lure that I got from Japan is going to pay dividends here at this marina during the winter. The specific action of this lure makes me think that it should be pretty good for a winter bait. So let's see what happens. Now the Phantom, it's definitely got a smooth retrieve, but it's got a hollow quality to it. I guess because the whole reel is so light and the weight is kind of distributed over a large area. I'm not sure if that slight noise I hear is the line going through the guides or the reel, but it's not a abnormal noise. So I have all the brakes turned on. Inside, the brakes are turned up to 6, and I have the dial set to 10, and I have pretty tight spool tension. And this way it casts pretty good. The spool is really controlled. And the distance is still pretty good. Actually really good, I would say. Okay, so that noise is definitely the line going through the guides. All right, a couple more casts here, and then I'm going to move to the main spot. Okay, I'm going to back these magnetic brakes down to see if that's going to make a difference in distance. I'm going to go down to 8. And one thing I noticed, the numbers here are starting to scratch off. I don't know if you guys can see, but the 7 is scratching off, the 9 and the 8. So that's something that's a negative you got to think about. Okay, I want to see if I can reach the other side of that dock by turning the brakes down a little bit more. So even though it's a 7-to-1 retrieve, the retrieve is still pretty powerful. It's not really struggling with this chatterbait. So I'm burning this chatterbait in, and the retrieve is pretty powerful. So turning this magnetic dial down doesn't seem to be making that much of a difference in distance. And the spool is still pretty controlled. Let me see if I can get this thing to fluff up on me. I'm gonna turn it down to 3. Okay, let's go down to 1, see if that makes a difference. Okay, so that definitely went farther by a few feet. and the brakes are still pretty controlled. So I think the line is finally settling on this spool. Let's go down to 0, see what happens. Okay, that makes me think I can go down to 5 on the internal brakes. Didn't either. Okay. So now the spool is starting to fluff. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me see if I can, but the distance definitely went up by going down on one of the internal centrifugal brakes. Let me see if I can hit the other side of that dock. Wow. Okay, so going from 6 to 5 probably netted me about almost probably over 10 feet in distance. And I don't think I can go to 4, that's for sure. Okay, let's go and move spots. Okay, so we move spots and we have a wind coming directly into me. So let's see what this Phantom can do in direct wind. All right, not too bad. Spool was really controlled. You can probably hear the brakes do make some noise. Okay, this thing is it's a really good caster. So right now I'm on 5 inside and 0 on the magnetic dial. I'm gonna see if I can go down to 4. All right, getting this side plate off is a hassle, which is a good thing. You don't like it moving, but when you got to open up the brakes, the side plate to get to the brakes. Okay, so we're going from 5 till 4, and once again, it's really hard to see because the notch here is black. Okay, we're going to 4. And just to be safe, I'm going to turn these brakes up all the way to 10. Okay, distance was about the same, maybe even a little less. So those magnets are definitely working a little bit in there. Let me see if I can go down on those magnets. So I went from 10 to 8. Okay, there was some fluffing of the spool there. I don't know if you guys could see that. I'm going to switch to a jerkbait here in a minute because it's that time of year. Okay, let's see what happens if I go down to 7. Okay, that was really good. I'd say that went about almost 40 yards. Let's go this way. I went a long way. So this reel can definitely cast. Light spool that's really tall at 36 millimeters. The retrieve is silent except you can hear the line going through the guides and the level wind. How far do you think that went? It's got to be at least 35, almost 40 yards. I'm going to see if I can go lower on the brakes. Now, I don't see any kind of topwater action. Usually there's a bunch of shad, schools of shad in and out of this marina. So we're going to 6. Okay, the spool started to fluff up, but there's a notch between 6 and 7. So I'm going to go between 6 and 7 because 6 was starting to get unruly. And we'll see if that solves that that fluffing. So the thumb bar feels solid. There's no mush or any kind of play. Okay, let's go this way again. Nope, I'm snagged. So when I was snagged there and I was trying to yank it free, the drag started to slip and it was really smooth. I know that's not a accurate indication of the drag characteristics, but just thought I'd let you guys know that. Okay, that's impressive. I almost hit the dock on the other side, and there's only 2 or 3 reels that I ever used that made it to the other side and hit that dock, and that was the 13 METANIUM MGL and the Scorpion DC. Now granted, I haven't really taken that many reels out here. I did take the CURADO K and the TATULA Type R out here, and I don't believe they could reach that dock. Now granted, I was using lighter jerkbait when I hit the dock with the METANIUM MGL. Okay, one more cast. Let that sink to the bottom. Knobs are pretty comfortable. They're a little smaller, but they're still the way they're shaped is really comfortable. Now this is a pointer 78, so it's I believe 3/8 of an ounce. But pointers cast really, really good. Okay, I guess the difference in weight was too much for the Phantom to handle, and I should have adjusted the brakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the magnetic brakes up to 10, because they were on 6, and see if that solves the issue. Okay, so that seemed to have solved it. Now there was some fluffing in the middle there, which tells me I need to keep an eye on the spool. Okay, let's go against the wind, and this could be bad, but let's see. Still got decent distance, but since I'm on the maximum magnetic brakes, the next logical step to cure that would be to go up one internally, which I'm gonna do. Now keep in mind, this is not the best fluorocarbon in the world, but I didn't want to use a spool of fluorocarbon that cost half as much as the reel itself. All right, let's adjust those brakes. Okay, so we are on 4, we're gonna go up to 5. Going up to 5, and we're gonna turn these magnetics to 0. Let's see how that affects this. Okay, so there was a little bit of fluff, but I believe we're on the right setting because I can turn up the magnets as needed. That's the bad thing about this place, is it's kind of steep, so the way I cast, I reach back really far, and I always hit these rocks and ding up my jerk baits. Okay, these brakes definitely make some kind of a high-pitched buzzing noise in
in the middle of the cast. Something I'm noticing with this style of centrifugal brakes. So this reel is kind of on the wide side. Now I love using my Shimano 50s or 70s for jerk baits because I like fishing them like this. I just basically need one hand and I can flip the pull in the slack. Oh, come on. There we go. I can pull in the slack just by using my finger. So I can just fish a jerkbait with one hand. But since this is kind of a wide reel, it's hard to do that. It's definitely not as easy as using my ALDEBARAN. But that's just a personal thing for me. All right, I need more magnetic brake.
Okay, so the Piscifun Phantom. What can we say about this reel? Now, as you can see, I put it through a field test and I actually took it fishing for an on-the-water test. And so I got a pretty good feel about the performance of this reel. Now, of course, as usual, when you're trying to catch a fish on video for your YouTube channel, none of them want to cooperate. So I can't really attribute to the fish fighting power of this reel, but as far as everything else, I think I got a good sense of it. Okay, so let's get to the field test. Now, if you guys are wondering what happened to the METANIUM MGL footage, unfortunately, on the second practice cast, I broke the plug off and it was the only one that I brought. So the METANIUM gets disqualified from that field test. So let's talk about the results of the only two reels that completed that test. Of course, that's the Daiwa SS SV and the Phantom. Now, I did something a little bit different for the Daiwa. It's not really that different. What I did was I loosened the spool tension to where you just minimize the side-to-side play as usual, but I backed it off just a smidge because Daiwa Japan recommends that that you do that. You loosen the spool tension to just minimize the side-to-side play, and then you back it off one click of the spool tension. Now, since the SS doesn't have a clicker, I just barely turned it, so there was just a little bit of movement. Now, this was to give the SS a fighting chance against these other reels. Now, turns out it really didn't matter because the Phantom absolutely smoked it with an average of 146 feet, while the SS SV averaged 130.4 feet. Now, in case you were wondering, I was only able to measure just one cast in practice with METANIUM before the plug broke off, and that went 168 feet. So it was well on its way to destroying these other two reels, just like it's pretty much destroyed every other reel in the 1/4 ounce plug test. So, but since it is disqualified, the Phantom wins the field test, beating the much more expensive Daiwa SS SV. So let's get to the fishing portion. Now, of course, casting a plug on a field is nothing like casting a reel lure when you're out fishing, at least for the most part. So I'm glad to say that out on the water throwing reel lures, the Phantom is an excellent caster as well. It was reaching spots at my fishing place that much more expensive reels can reach and lesser reels cannot reach, and that's due to the spool. Of course, it's got a big tall spool that's really lightweight and very fine-tunable brakes. Now, as far as the winding, retrieving, etc., is very smooth, very rigid. Now you can tell it's kind of hollow. It's not as substantial as reels that have a metal body or heavier reels. but that's to be expected when you're looking at a carbon frame that's this light. But as far as the retrieve goes, it is really smooth, and it's got decent power, as I was burning in that chatterbait with no issues. Now, as far as the ergonomics, the ergonomics are not as good as the Daiwa SS SV, and what I mean by ergonomics, I mean the palming. I don't know if you can pick that up, but the SS SV sits lower on the real seat, so it's more comfortable to palm, and the METANIUM MGL as well. The METANIUM MGL sits pretty low on the real seat, but this is not uncomfortable by any means. It's just average in that respect, I think. Alright, so let's go over all the pros and the cons of this reel before I pass the final judgment. Now, of course, the pros there are that it casts really good. You know, it casts up there with much more expensive reels. In fact, it pretty much equaled the much more expensive CHRONARCH MGL in the field test for the 1/4 ounce plug. It's very refined. It's got a lot of high-end refined features, like the micro click spool tension. It gives you really precise adjustments. Of course, it's got the extremely adjustable brakes, and the thumb bar feels very nice and positive. There's no mush or slop, and this rubber piece here actually works. When the thumb bar got wet, I still had plenty of grip to be able to press it. Now the drag feels nice and positive. Of course, I wasn't able to test the drag or the fish fighting power, but you know, that's life. Okay, so it's not all roses though. Okay, so let's go over the cons. Now, there has a few, there's not many, but there are a few. Now, at first, when I first got the reel, I said that the finish was a matte finish, and that's actually untrue. The finish is more of a satin feel. And I say satins because when you're running your hand over it, it's very smooth to the touch. Your skin just glides over the finish for this reel. Now, if it was a true matte finish, it wouldn't do that. Now, because of this finish, I don't know if you can see, but it's very prone to picking up scratches. Now, I laid this reel down just for a moment to tie on a lure. I don't even think it touched a rock, but it picked up a couple of scratches somehow. So it's very prone to scratching. And let's talk about the paint, and specifically the numbers. Now, the paint, apparently it sits on the outside of the finish, so it's very prone to being rubbed off, as you can see right there. Some of the 10 is being rubbed off, the 9 is starting to go, some of the 8, the top part of the 7 is already rubbed off, and this happened before I even went fishing. This all happened just from palming the reel during the field test. So if Piscifun, if they're watching this, I would recommend that you put the whatever satin coating on top of the paint to help protect that. Now, the last con that I can really think of, it has to do with the brakes. Now, during some casts, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but during the middle towards the end portion, the brakes were making some kind of a whirring noise that reminded me of the Concept Z. And I think that's becoming a trend with any reel that has this style of centrifugal brakes. I don't know if this ring needs oil or not, but yeah, and that wasn't every cast, it was only some. And it didn't really affect performance, but for some of you guys who like quiet reels, this may not be the reel for you, because the brakes are, they're kind of loud. But yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. Now, of course, another big question is longevity. Will this reel last? Now, for $70, if this thing lasts for 2 years of just regular use. And what I mean by regular use, I'm thinking fishing it twice a week, you know, on the weekends or whatnot, then this would be literally one of the biggest bargains ever, because you have a lot of high-end features, you have a lot of casting performance. Now of course there are reels that cast better, like this, and of course there are reels that are more refined when you're retrieving and using them, like this, but none of them are 70 bucks. So as far as price goes, this really bumps up this reel in every category. So if the casting was a 8.5 out of 10, then of course this being only 70 bucks bumps that up to about a 9. And of course if refinement was an 8, then of course 70 bucks bumps that up to an 8.5. So there we go, Piscifun Phantom. I do plan on fishing it some more and seeing if I can stick a fish on it, and hopefully maybe give you guys an update on how this thing handles fish. But so far this thing is definitely a bargain. A lot of performance for the money, performs like much more expensive reels, has features of much more expensive reels, but for a fraction of the cost. So if you guys are interested in this reel, of course I'm going to leave a link in the comments and description to the Amazon store where you can pick it up. Alright guys, thanks a lot.